When it comes to the history of gold, one can't help but think of the rugged prospectors who left everything behind with shovel and pickaxe in hand to venture to California in the hopes of staking a claim that would make their fortunes and change their lives forever. I'm talking, of course, about the great California gold rush of the 1840s, when men were men and where saloons were thick with the smell of whiskey and tobacco as bar brawls broke out over women, who were outnumbered practically 10 to 1 by the testosterone-driven gold seekers. If this all sounds overly nostalgic, trust me, these were anything but fun-loving times, and the darkness at the heart of man was revealed for all to see. Xenophobia, racism, violence, mob law, and evil deeds formed an undercurrent that threatened the very souls of those whose visions of riches came up against the harsh reality of the California desert. Those who staked their claim early benefited greatly by discovering an abundance of gold near the Earth's surface in the California region. These early adopters often got in, focused on working hard and obtaining the maximum yield of gold with not a lot of competition, and then got out with their fortunes. Records exist of men easily removing massive nuggets of gold that were practically lying out in the open, with minimal effort required and incredible reward to be reaped. In those early days, it wasn't uncommon for someone to pull up enough gold to buy 100 horses in only a few days' time. 1848 was a year of massive success for so many who arrived early to the party, and tales of their incredible fortunes drove others to relocate to San Francisco in the hopes of striking it rich. But like a modern millennial investor following the herd into chasing the latest hot cryptocurrency all the way to the bottom, those tales of early success would prove elusive to prospectors who weren't willing or able to take the initiative before anyone really knew what was out there. A lot of men with stable jobs and established families were nonetheless enticed by the possibility of making a fortune in a short amount of time, and so set off on what was a life-altering journey, only to find that the work was absolutely grueling and the payoff was not anywhere near the tall tales they'd heard in the papers and from the rumor mongers about town. There was a great misconception that if you went to California and were willing to work hard, you could have your fill of gold and would be able to go back home with great riches. As most discovered, this was more often than not nothing more than a pipe dream. Men would toil all day long, suffering persistent injuries as well as contracting scurvy and other illnesses, and would dig up practically nothing at all. As reality set in for many, they grew angry and depressed. Not a good combination for men with a wild streak in a Wild West type of land. In addition, the land itself proved harsh and unforgiving, particularly on the journey to California for many settlers. Livestock were lost to famine and disease, and grass for the horses, along with clean water, became scarce, causing diseases like cholera to take their terrible toll. The native Indian population also found itself an unwilling casualty of the stream of prospectors who now competed with them for resources. Before the rush, the California region was home to a sparse 170,000 inhabitants, the vast majority being indigenous to the area. As the pioneers marched forward, their consumption of the Indians' food supply, land, and water created a burden for their population that threatened their survival. Attempts to push out foreigners from the rush began around 1850. There were approximately 80,000 Anglo-American miners in California, and competition was at its peak. Many of these men had utterly failed in their quest for riches, and as is often human nature, they looked for something outside of themselves to blame for their misfortunes. As gold became scarcer and the number of prospectors grew, white Americans started to band together and threaten Mexicans, Chileans, and other so-called foreigners, even those who were originally born in the area. The rule of these gangs was, if you weren't American, you didn't have any claim to the gold. They used threats of violence, sometimes backed up by lynching, to enforce mob rule. Some of the best miners came from Latin America, as that region already had a storied mining history, and many of these men had previous experience. This caused a lot of jealousy and resentment, so much so that the Anglo-American miners ended up convincing the recently formed California government to levy a foreign miners tax on non-white workers. This tax was so prohibitive that Latin American miners ended up leaving in droves, as it ate too much into their profits to make the endeavor worthwhile. Others were not so easily turned away, however, and formed roaming gangs on horseback that sequestered themselves in the hills and raided Anglo-American mining camps, stealing everything in sight, often with deadly force. As so often happens in times of turmoil, violence begets violence, and the cycle feeds on itself until nothing is left but the ashes. Commodity Culture is a series that covers the history and culture surrounding commodities and natural resources. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, please subscribe and hit the bell notification to ensure you are always alerted of the latest episodes.